said we're gonna put the live feed up before the cut-in. She doesn't have to do anything but tell her not to swear. Give her a thumbs up in the camera.
So what do I mean?
So they mean digital?
Also, Jensen, is it okay when I step out of frame, I'm going to step back in a frame?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I can. Okay. Stand by. Is anyone tossing to me? If you can hear me. That's right, Kim. So there was an active shooter situation here at Fort Stewart, and they were on lockdown at around 11:04. And I'm going to move out of the way because they just recently got out of the lockdown, and they are letting some cars through. But let me run you back about what we have learned so far. So Fort Stewart was on lockdown at the 2nd Brigade Combat Team area, and like I said, that was instilled at 11:04, and law enforcement was on the scene. And I spoke to some Fort Stewart officials, and they say casualties have been reported, but there's not yet a number on how many casualties or anything else about the shooter. We are still learning a lot more information about this, and we will continue to update you on air and online as we do learn more. Reporting in Fort Stewart, I'm Isabel Baez, WSAV News 3 on your side. Okay. They might go back to the live shot. Did that make sense? I feel like that was so fast, but...
Wait, what did you say?
Did that make sense?
No, wait, before that. They might go.
Oh, they might go back to the live shot. Okay. Oh, this was you.
They might.
She's done now, so her and Darian are going back to the second rotation, and I'm going to keep her rolling on the Okay, sorry about that.
We are following breaking news right now. Fort Stewart near Savannah, currently on lockdown because of an active shooter incident. We got an update just a few seconds ago. The shooter is in custody. There is no active threat, but we have just gotten confirmation that 5 soldiers have been injured in this active shooter incident on Fort Stewart's Army Airfield. So all 5 soldiers who were injured were treated on site at a medical facility. We do not have information yet on the level of their injuries, but again, we can confirm 5 soldiers were injured in this active shooter incident in Savannah. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Fort Stewart. About 10,000 soldiers are stationed there, also including Army civilians working there, of course, their families as well. And what we're hearing is this was all centered around the 3rd Infantry Division headquartered at Fort Stewart there, and the 2nd Armored Brigade combat team is within that. It's also known as the Spartan Brigade, and that is where all of this happened. As of 12:10 p.m., that area is still shut down. This is the 2nd ABCT. So again, that we know that a shooter is in custody. This is one of the Army's most modernized brigades. The U.S. Army refers to the brigade as the most modern, best equipped, most lethal unit in America's arsenal. And this is the brigade that was at the center of this active shooting on the campus here in Savannah. We are following the Facebook page very closely. They are giving us some updates, and what we're seeing first and foremost is all the family members who are commenting. My son's there, my daughter's there, so still a lot of questions from the outside in on who are among the injured. We do not know that answer to that question. However, we do have the confirmation that 5 people were injured. We are looking now through our sister station, WJCL, on the ground, providing these live pictures right now. Governor Kemp has posted a statement already to Facebook as we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground. Marty, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We're keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answered the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same. We are also hearing from the FBI, also giving us some new information. FBI Atlanta has an office in Savannah, and FBI Atlanta says that office is aware of the incident at Fort Stewart, is coordinating with Army Criminal Investigations Division for any assistance that might be needed. So lockdown has been happening at all the gates around Fort Stewart, but it has also trickled into some school districts in the area of Savannah. So for people, if you have friends or family in that area, if they have children, this is impacting some school districts in that area that are also on lockdown. That could change as confirmation has come in that the shooter is in custody, and the Army base is saying there is no active threat. Let me walk you through the timeline a little bit here. Law enforcement was first dispatched at 10:56 this morning. The shooter was apprehended at 11:35, so about a 39-minute gap between when that first call came in and when that person was in custody. The installation was locked down very quickly. That happened 8 minutes after that first call. You can imagine that was probably a chaotic time, but the response was fast. Fort Stewart lifted the lockdown of the main area at 12:10. So that was about 30 minutes or so after the apprehension of the shooter. Emergency medical personnel dispatched to treat the wounded soldiers at 11:09. So from the first call to help being on the ground for those who were injured was 14 minutes, and the incident remains under investigation, of course. And again, we can, even though we don't have specific information on the conditions of these 5 soldiers, I think it is encouraging they're all being treated on site at that medical facility, because we do know there's a level 1 trauma center about an hour away. But again, all of the 5 injured soldiers are being treated on site at that medical facility. It's the Wynn Army Medical Hospital there on the base. A lot of questions right now, as you can imagine, for everyone who works on the base, who have loved ones on the base. Again, we're talking about a massive area. The base itself is about 280,000 acres. About 10,000 soldiers roughly stationed at Fort Stewart, but then there's also Army civilian employees there. And think about all the families who either are on the base or in that surrounding area. It's located in Hinesville. It's about 41 miles southwest of the city of Savannah. It is the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi River. Again, it covers about 280,000 acres. That includes parts of 6 counties. So when a call like this comes out, there is a massive coordination that happens, as we mentioned, not just for the Army base, but for all those local jurisdictions, for those 6 counties and the schools in the closest proximity to the base, especially in that 40 minutes of time before the initial call and that shooter being in custody. That's when all of the calls out for lockdowns were happening, not just on the base, but in the surrounding area. There was a call out for people to stay inside, lock doors, and that's when the school lockdowns were happening as well. Just a moment ago, we got a new statement in from Buddy Carter that we see here on the screen. Representative Buddy Carter writing, "I am monitoring the situation at Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community." Everyone coming together now, thinking of the 5 that we can confirm were injured in this active shooting at Fort Stewart. Let me just reset for those of you who are just joining us. We're covering breaking news about 40 miles outside of Savannah at Fort Stewart Army Base. An active shooter was called into law enforcement at 10:56 this morning, and the call out came to lock everything down on the base and in the surrounding area. We know the center point of this investigation is the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, also known as the Spartan Brigade. That is the specific division in the area they say the shooting happened. Again, we know 5 soldiers are injured and as we speak are getting medical attention, being treated there. Worth repeating, shooter is in custody and we are told there is no active threat. Fort Stewart Army Air Force Base is updating on Facebook because, of course, they're being inundated from friends and family wondering what's happening. As I scroll through the comments, what you're seeing is my son's there, my brother's there, I have a friend that works there, and everybody wondering if it's someone they know, people trying to deal with that communication. But they are not releasing right now the names of the 5 injured, nor are they talking about the conditions of those people. Another statement just coming in now from the White House from Caroline Leavitt. The president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring the situation. So all eyes on the state of Georgia right now as this is unfolding as we speak outside of Savannah. Of course, Georgia has a big military presence and so many military members based here in Georgia, and Fort Stewart is among the biggest. We have mentioned it's the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi River. We know the governor, the president's office now, the FBI, all working collectively to keep an eye on any new information that's coming in. 5 soldiers shot in an active shooter incident. Again, this is Fort Stewart, Georgia. You're looking at this live picture on the left and an overview on the right, which shows it's about 40 miles away from Savannah. But that picture on the right, that image, that map really shows you how massive this base is. 280,000 acres, more than 10,000 soldiers, 5 of whom are now getting medical treatment. You know, there had been talk on the Facebook page about who can have a weapon on the base, which is interesting. And some of the soldiers, they were saying that only the MPs carry. So one big question is, who is this shooter and how did they get access to the firearm that was used in this shooting? And that will be a part of the conversation in the times to come, because these Army bases, as you're looking at this gate, have incredibly tight security. There are very specific protocols about who's in, who's out, and who can have a weapon, how they register that, how that's communicated is a big part of that conversation. So as this all unfolds, that will be one tentacle of a very complex investigation that now the entire country is watching, as we know that an active shooter was called in this morning and pardon me, and 5 people were hurt. The timeline is very interesting, as that call came in just at 10:56, and they were able to apprehend the shooter about 11:35. We're now getting a statement from U.S. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock, representing Georgia. He writes, "I'm heartbroken to see the news of an active shooter incident at Fort Stewart today. I'm monitoring the situation closely and call on all of Georgia as we pray for the safety of our service members, staff, and their families." Certainly unifying both sides of the aisle, as we're hearing from Senator Warnock, Representative Buddy Carter, Governor Kemp, the Trump administration as well, and hearing from investigators that they're already on the ground. That's one thing you can be certain of at a base that has this profile, that investigators descended on this very quickly, and that is happening fast as we speak. Hinesville Police Department also sharing some new information. The Hinesville Police Department writing that, along with other local law enforcement agencies, they responded to help out at Fort Stewart as the law enforcement on the base was responding to the active shooter. Hinesville Police saying at this time the scene is secure. There is currently no evidence to suggest any ongoing or further active threat to the community. They're asking all questions be directed to Fort Stewart officials. And I mentioned it briefly as I'm keeping an eye on Facebook and X and the conversations online. There is thousands of people reaching out, asking for information about people they know and people they love. That trickle of communication is slow right now, as the 2 priorities are the 5 soldiers confirmed to be injured in this active shooter, and 2, the investigation, but they will share that communication as they can. In fact, I'm a little surprised how quickly some of that information came out as we looked at that timeline. Even the timeline of the initial call coming in at 10:56 in the morning, and then the shooter in custody 39 minutes later. But now the questions will now need to be answered about how it happened. Who was this person? How did they get access? What was the weapon? And then the why. That's the big question everybody has. Why did it happen? And how did it happen on this base? Again, the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi River. It is like a city in itself, functioning, a medical center, so much happening there. A massive presence about 40 miles outside of Savannah. We have crews on the way. There are a lot of journalists there waiting to get answers to some of the questions that people are asking as well. We want to show you the hospital right now where these 5 individuals are being treated. Again, worth mentioning that there's been no indication of the severity of these injuries of the 5 soldiers that were confirmed to be hurt in this active shooter incident that happened at Fort Stewart just about 2 hours ago now. I do want to say that the fact that they stayed on the premises is encouraging, that they were able to go to the medical facility that was in such close proximity to where the shooting happened. Again, we have heard from Senator Warnock, we've heard from the FBI, we've heard from Representative Buddy Carter and Governor Brian Kemp, we've heard from the Trump administration, and we expect that we'll hear from many more elected officials in the minutes and hours to come, and we'll be sure to bring you all of that information as it comes in here on 11 Alive News. So just to recap, if you're just joining us, just before 11 o'clock this morning, there was an active shooter at Fort Stewart, the largest base east of the Mississippi River, about 40 miles outside of Savannah. We can confirm that 5 soldiers were injured in that shooting. We're waiting on their names and the extent of those injuries. The shooter is in custody, and we are hearing from those on the ground that they are not concerned about a second shooter. They are saying at this point there is no threat. We'll continue to ask questions, and as we get more information, be sure to join us here on 11 Alive Plus.
This has been an 11 Alive News Special Report.